Story 1. My name is Ben, and in case something happens, I need to write down what I saw, or at least think I saw. Whether you believe me or not is up to you. I know what I'm about to describe might sound crazy. I would have said it was impossible just a while ago. I know I should have just walked away when I saw the red flags. I should have listened to my gut. Sometimes, a job is not worth it, regardless of the pay. Now I fear whatever I saw last night could be looking for me this very moment. I should have left the first time I heard the bells. It started 2 weeks ago. I had lost my job and was looking for work. It had already been 2 months at that point since the factory closed, and for the first time in years, I was unemployed. When I was looking for places that were hiring online, I noticed I had received a strange email. It was a work advertisement. Now hiring security personnel for night shift at Aurora Ridge Cemetery. Call for more details. No previous security experience required. I was glad to see a potential job prospect had come to me. I never thought to look for security jobs, and definitely not at a place like a cemetery. I decided to call the number listed. The line rang for a minute until someone answered. It was a man with an odd inflection in his voice, like an accent slightly out of time. He was polite though, and sounded genuinely happy someone had contacted him about the offer. "Oh, thank you for the call. My name is Mr. Penny. I'm so glad you are interested in working with us at Aurora Ridge. I would like to arrange a short meeting and introductory tour. If you are still interested in the job." I was thrilled and eagerly responded, "Yes, thank you, Mr. Penny. I would love to. When can we meet?" "Well, tonight at 9:30 p.m. would work for me if it works for you." I paused for a moment, surprised that it would be an interview the same night I had inquired and be so late in the evening. I did not second guess it though, I agreed, and Mr. Penny sounded delighted, almost like I was doing him a favor. "Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to seeing you here. Always happy to work with a new soul. Take care and see you then." He hung up, and despite how odd the arrangement was, I was happy I might have a paycheck again. I set out at 9 p.m., leaving a bit of time to get there early, since Aurora Ridge was only a 10-minute drive from my apartment based on the directions. The place seemed to be nestled out of the way, off the main road leading into town. When I first arrived, I had to double-check that I was at the right place. I kept driving a little further on a dirt road and practically into the forest. When I came upon the main gate, I was relieved. A tall iron fence crossed the clearing, and I saw the sign by the main gate and knew I was there. It read, "Welcome to Aurora Ridge Cemetery, where the light of lives rest eternal." The gate was closed, and when I stepped out of my car, I was dismayed when I saw it was locked as well. I guessed I would just have to wait until Mr. Penny was there to let me in. I waited for a while, and when I checked my phone, it was 9:40 p.m. I was getting worried that I had been tricked and that no one would show up. As I nervously glanced around the area, the light faded further and twilight glowed in the distance. Something about it was odd and made me do a double take. I thought I saw a strange light in the sky. It looked like it was coming from somewhere on the grounds, but further inside the cemetery. The strange thing was that the light was not in any shade of twilight I had ever seen. It was a sort of green, like one might see in the northern lights. It stood out amongst the other colors, and the more I stared at the shifting pattern in the sky, the more unnatural the green light seemed to be. It lingered when the other colors faded away into the darkness of night, like it had a strange phosphorescence. The odd viewing of the lights was interrupted when I heard a car approaching, and I looked and saw a large hearse driving down the road. It pulled up slowly, and I could hear the pained grinding of the ancient vehicle, and it lurched to a halt. A man stepped out of the hearse. He wore a jet-black suit and was very tall but rail-thin. Oddly, he also wore a pair of sunglasses that looked glaringly out of place in the dark night. He straightened his jacket and slid a hand back over his thin grey hair. He smiled when he saw me and walked over with a distinct, almost theatrical stride. He reached the gate and unlocked it, and he sauntered towards me as the gate yawned open. "Hello, Ben, was it? Pleased to meet you. I trust you found the place all right." I shook his outstretched hand, and he gripped me disturbingly tightly. He kept smiling and shaking until I let go and responded, "Yes, thank you, sir, though I was afraid you might not be coming." Mr. Penny looked apologetic. "Yes, I know. So sorry for the inconvenience. I had to make a last-minute pickup and I was delayed, though I should give more care to the living. After all, the dead can wait." He chuckled at his own words, like an inside joke. He laughed it off and shrugged. "Well then, shall we?" He ushered me forward and we stepped in together. Mr. Penny had insisted we walk, promising that the site was not far. though as we moved I was struck by just how empty the place seemed to be. Only about a dozen gravestones lay scattered throughout the cemetery. As if reading my mind, Mr. Penny spoke as we walked. "You might notice the scarcity of graves here. Though our business is new, the lot is ancient. We have more residents here than it appears, but age, degradation and a rather distressing incident have destroyed many of the plots and stones. We still keep the grounds, but leave the other resting places unmarked and undisturbed." I thought I saw that odd green light in the distance again before Mr. Penny pointed to a small building we were moving past. "That is the groundskeeper's building. Old Horace tends the grounds in the day. You might see him on the way out on some nights, but he does not normally stay after dark." I nodded my head and we moved up the gentle hill toward a larger building in the distance. The green glow was gone, and I started to wonder if I had really seen it at all. Mr. Penny spoke up again and pointed to the building. "Here we are. Please follow me if you would. The station is here and we will discuss the job further, but the site that really matters is just a short way further up the hill. We will get to that and more, assuming you agree to take the position." He smiled awkwardly and I was confused by the comment. I thought I was guarding the entire cemetery. What was this other site? The security station came into clearer view as we moved closer, and I saw it had a strange, almost tower-like lookout that jutted out of the roof, giving it the impression of a lighthouse looking out over a vast ocean of the buried dead. We walked up to the door and he fumbled with a large ring of keys. He glanced at me apologetically as he tried a few to no effect. Finally, the door opened on rusty hinges and he held out a hand to invite me in. We walked inside and I saw it resembled a sparse cabin, barely any furniture, besides a table, chair and a small footlocker. It was not what I had expected. I thought there might at least be a monitor and some security cameras. Near the corner I saw the only other door and a ladder that must lead to the odd lookout tower. The door closed behind us and it focused my attention back on Mr. Penny. "Well then, please take a chair. Don't worry, I'll stand, seeing as how there is not an abundance of chairs." He chuckled half-heartedly, and I smiled slightly to not disappoint his attempt at humor. "Here at Aurora Ridge, we value hard work and integrity, but we need to know we can trust you to do your best and not let base fears get in the way of your contributions. So, I must ask, are you afraid of the dead and their resting places?" I was taken off guard by the question, but I guessed it must be some sort of interview he was doing first, so I answered honestly, "No, I'm not afraid of the dead or cemeteries, sir." He smiled at my answer. "Good, very good. Do you believe in ghosts or spirits?" I replied, "No," once again. Mr. Penny nodded his head and continued, "Good. You see, many employees have left this job in the past. It is not for the faint of heart. I know it seems straightforward, just guarding the grounds at night, but alone and in the dark." He paused, while fixing his stare on me and adjusting his sunglasses, but not taking them off. "Well, people forget themselves, start to see things. The mind gets tired, fantastical stories start becoming believable, and even skeptics can start to believe absurd things. So I assure you, if you follow the rules and do not give in to crazy musings, you will do well." His smile was back and I was wondering how many people had this job before. "Speaking of doing well, we pay well for this position. The stress it puts on the mind can be harrowing, and we like to offer our night guardsmen something akin to hazard pay. Therefore, we are willing to offer a salary of $3,000 a week." My jaw almost hit the floor when I heard how much it paid. I had no idea what sort of security job paid that much, but I was stunned by the offer. "I see I have your attention. Good. I will take that as a yes then." I was already nodding my head eagerly before he had even gotten into the particulars of the job. "Good, very good." He smiled and held out his hand. I shook it without even thinking to ask why the pay was so significant and why he had called it hazard pay. "Well then, please, if you would, follow me. We have a special place to visit, and I need you to listen closely. The instructions are paramount to your success." I nodded my head and opened a note app on my phone. Mr. Penny led the way on a small path, lit only by the dim light of a small row of solar stake lamps. We ascended the hill and the path led into what looked like a thicket. Mr. Penny walked on, unbothered, and gestured me to follow. The small drape of plant life brushed away easily, and a somewhat concealed glen rested beyond. The area was hauntingly beautiful. Flowers grew around the soft green grass, and fireflies danced around a small tree near the center. The pretty ambience distracted from the other key features in this tiny clearing. Near the center of the glen were 4 evenly spaced gravestones. They were fairly large, but not imposing. and each one had a small string hanging above them, connected to tiny bells. I thought it was odd. Grave bells were not used anymore, since modern medical science had long since determined a way to verify if someone was truly deceased. Beyond the 4 graves was a small, but intricately detailed mausoleum. The sight of all the scenery was jarring. I took another step toward the surreal resting place. Suddenly, Mr. Penny grabbed my shoulder, holding me back momentarily. He was looking at me as if appraising my reaction. Beautiful, isn't it? An oasis of calm, separate from the drudgery of life. Your first and most important job is keeping this place safe. I know you have many questions, but I'm going to explain the most important expectations regarding security here at Aurora Ridge. Failure to comply with them will result in consequences. Understood? I nodded my head at his sudden change of tone. Good, very good. I will be sure to remind you of that commitment. In fact, your predecessor had to be terminated for failing to follow protocol. So, if you wish to remain, you will listen carefully. He sounded serious, and I nodded my head and listened to the instructions. Your work hours will be 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You are not to leave until 6 a.m. unless expressly authorized. Breaks can be taken within reason, but you may not leave the grounds during breaks. You must stay at your post. Lunches must be brought in with you. No delivery services, of course. Bathroom breaks are of course permitted, but time should be strictly monitored. Sound systems should continue to be verified even during restroom breaks to ensure fast response should something happen. You are not to disturb the grounds directly, no going past or disturbing this line, especially no going near the graves. I looked to where he was pointing, and it was the small white line that seemed to stretch onto the left and right. My foot had almost crossed it, and I realized that was why Mr. Penny had stopped me. At first it looked like it was drawn on like a football field, but I noticed when I looked closer it seemed to be made of salt. Mr. Penny waited until I looked back up at him and continued. Absolutely no trespassers. We are closed at night. Any and all trespassers must be detained and dealt with. There is a channel on the radio that you must call if intruders are detected, Channel 6. Your job is observation. Other security personnel will detain them prior to removal by law enforcement. Understood? I nodded my head again and he moved on. Sometimes external influences can disrupt the lines of demarcation if this occurs. Please reapply the security salt to ensure the ring stays whole at all times. This last rule is critical. You must abide. Are you paying attention? He asked sharply. I nodded my head and confirmed. If the graveyard bells ring, even if it is just one, you are to press the SOS button on your radio to signal the event. Then you must evacuate immediately. You will have exactly 3 minutes to make your way up the hill and to the mausoleum outside the ring. Then you are to use this key and enter the mausoleum, close the door and wait until morning, no earlier than 6 a.m. Do you understand? It was the strangest request so far. I had no idea why the bells would ring, unless someone was buried alive. I couldn't help but ask after that one. But sir, why would they? Mr. Penny cut me off. They almost never do, but strange things can happen here. Even if you think it is just the wind, it's better to be safe than sorry. Go to the mausoleum, lock up and stay put. Any interaction with the bells after they ring, even waiting to watch what happens after the first 3 minutes will be no problem. Nothing will happen to you if you follow the rules. Understand? I was concerned and very skeptical, but I was more desperate to have a paycheck again. I figured I would follow whatever superstitious rules I was given if it meant not being broke anymore. I nodded my head and agreed. Yes. Mr. Penny beamed at my response. Excellent. Well then, if that's all settled, I will show you to the tower. We have the watchtower there to keep a safe eye on the place while keeping a respectful distance. There are night vision binoculars, a directional microphone, and a radio there, along with spare batteries for the lot back in the security building. The station also has a small restroom which we have stored some extra salt in as well, should you need to reapply it. He led me back to the building and I stepped inside. I saw the small footlocker that he mentioned the devices were in. When I turned back and saw Mr. Penny was not coming inside, he did an about-face and smiled. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. I need you to start tonight. I hope that's all right. I was surprised, but felt like I couldn't say no without jeopardizing the opportunity, so I reluctantly agreed. Yes, of course. Fantastic. I knew I was right about you. Take care and keep your eyes peeled and ears open. Have a good night, my friend. He closed the door, and just like that I was alone at my new job, watching over a small gravesite for an absurd salary and following a bizarre list of rules. I looked around again briefly and realized I should probably head up the small tower and take a look from my vantage. It sounded like I was going to spend most of my nights there. I opened the footlocker near the ladder and removed a surprisingly nice and expensive-looking pair of night vision binoculars. I switched it on, and the battery charge was full. There was also a small directional microphone, which had a wireless headset it connected to. I also grabbed the handheld radio and switched it on. I stowed the items and climbed the ladder to the lonesome tower. I saw a folding chair set aside in the lookout and was grateful that I was not expected to stand there for hours on end, though I regretted not bringing something to help pass the time. I had not expected to work that night, but with the knowledge of the payday I had in store, a few boring hours watching some graves was nothing. I grabbed the small chair, unfolded it, and set it up so it would be facing toward the hill I had to watch. When I sat down, I saw that I had a good view of the surroundings acres of grounds. It was all positioned just right to see directly into the little glen that housed my charge. While looking closer with the binoculars, I noticed something odd. None of the 4 special gravestones had any names or any markings on them. They were all blank. I found it strange, but once again I did not question my fortune in guarding them. After an hour and a half, my eyes started to get tired constantly looking out at the site. The perimeter ring was undisturbed. Nothing was moving about, barely even a breeze to disturb the dead silence of it all. I switched over to the directional microphone and pointed it at the site to confirm. As I had expected, there was nothing at first. Then I thought I heard a low groaning, creaking sound. It was odd, but not too concerning. After a while, I started hearing another sound, like a persistent scratching and tapping. It continued for half an hour, and I was about to go investigate. Then it suddenly stopped just as I was about to go back down. I managed to make it through the rest of the night with no further issues. Almost the entire first week was uneventful, but on Friday, something happened. I had a routine prepared for the long haul, including snacks and entertainment to pass the time while staying focused on my objective. I couldn't listen to anything since I had to keep an ear out for the bells on the microphone, but I was able to steal a few moments of time to read a book. I wanted to use my phone, but reception was bad, so it was a non-starter. I made it through almost the entire night and was so engrossed by the book, was reading that I did not pick up on the sounds coming through the mic at first. It took me a second to realize I was hearing voices coming from the tree line. I propped the mic up so I could still hear and grabbed the binoculars. I looked out at the graves and did not see anything at first. Then I saw rustling in the foliage near the mausoleum, and 3 figures emerged. I had to do something. They were heading for the site. I heard the voices speaking clearer as I trained the mic directly on them. "How did we even get this far, Erin? And what light are you talking about? It is too dark to see anything out here." The first voice spoke, sounding like a young man. Another responded to the question curtly. "I know what I saw, Jess. There was a weird green light. It was coming from here. It didn't look natural. Guys, we shouldn't be here, this place. There's something not right about it." Another voice spoke up, meek and concerned. She was right about one thing: they shouldn't be there. I had to figure out what to do. I remembered the instructions and switched on the radio to channel 6. "This is Ben, in the tower. There are 3 trespassers by the site, going down now to investigate." There was no response, so I just moved on, grabbing my flashlight and rushing downstairs. I sprinted toward this glen and made it through just in time to see the 3 strangers stepping over and disrupting the salt line. They all looked fairly young, 2 girls and a boy, probably in their teens. I shouted out a warning. "Stop! This is private property." 2 of them held up their hands, even though it was only a flashlight I was holding. The third looked at me with a mixture of confusion and fascination. "What is this place?" the girl had asked, sounding like she was speaking while in a dream. The other 2 looked scared and confused. I spoke again, slightly softer than before. "This is private property and a graveyard satisfied. Now clear off. You are not supposed to be here." I tried to sound commanding, but not overly hostile. Her 2 friends shrunk back, clearly not wanting to get in trouble, but she stepped forward and asked me a surprising question. "I came for the light. Did you see it too?" There was something in it. It called me here. I shined my flashlight on her, and her expression looked oddly distant. The mention of the light was weird. I remembered the green light I had seen the first day. Maybe this group had seen it too. I felt guilty for detaining them, but knew I had to get them to leave. I lowered my hands and tried to get them to listen. "I'm not sure what light you think called you here, but you all should get back home. It is late, and you look like high schoolers. Your parents must be worried. Do you live close?" The girl in the middle, Erin, as I had heard her friends call her, offered an odd response. I don't know. I can't remember. She sounded scared suddenly. The other two looked at her and then at each other. I shined the light on them again and I saw their eyes were glassy. I thought they might have taken some psychedelics or something, since they did not seem to be all there. Then when I looked closer, I saw a hint of unnatural green light reflecting off their eyes. The effect was eerie, and I decided to lead them out of there. I hoped they had a number I could call to have their parents pick them up. I explained my plan to them and they agreed. Yeah, let's go. I think it was a mistake coming here. Something's wrong with this place, I don't like it, the boy said as if waking up from a dream. The girls nodded and suddenly looked more lucid than when they had arrived. I was relieved and started ushering them out. But before I could show the way back, I was startled when I heard a loudspeaker demanding that the group freeze! It was two large men in riot-style security gear. I did not know why they were there, but then I remembered the radio call. I tried to explain the situation, but the two men brushed past me and seized two of the teenagers roughly. I tried to protest, but one of them knocked me down in the pursuit and I fell hard. Erin had tried to get away, even while her friends had been seized, but as she reached the tree line, a third figure grabbed her. It was Mr. Penny. The teens protested and struggled, and I did not like the force that the others were using to detain them. Before I could voice my concern, Mr. Penny spoke. Very good, Ben. Nice work. Looks like we got here before they could do any damage. We will escort them off the premises after some community service, I replied, trying to see if I could help. Thank you, sir. Though they don't seem like they came here to cause trouble, maybe we can let them go without involving the police. Mr. Penny chuckled, then responded, Oh, they should be so lucky. No, we will let them go after they re-salt the circle. Then we will put them back where they belong. But you must not concern yourself. Since we are here and will be repairing the damage, you are free to go for the last few hours. Go home and get some sleep. I will handle it from here. I did not like the situation. I looked at the teens and they were not shouting or protesting. They just seemed to be staring at the graves, like they were in a trance. I thought I saw the weird light emerging from the ground for a split second before it was gone. Then I saw the two men in riot gear holding large bags of salt. It looked like one of them was moving tools, and I thought I saw a shovel in his hands. My heartbeat quickened, and I was getting nervous about what was happening. But as I was about to protest going home, Mr. Penny stood up and walked over to me. He put an arm on my shoulder and turned me around to face him directly. I saw he was holding his sunglasses in his hand, and I realized it was the first time I had seen him take them off. Don't work too hard. Just go home, now. I remembered looking up and facing him. After that, I don't remember what I saw. The next thing I knew, it was 6:15 a.m. I was asleep in my car, parked just outside my apartment. I had no recollection of how I got back. Somehow, I had left, driven home, and fell asleep in my car in those last 2 hours. Something was seriously wrong, but I had no way of explaining just what it was. I had wanted to talk to Mr. Penny about the strange experience, but he was absent for most of the next week. I grew more nervous about what had happened, but I kept going back. I did not like it, but felt like I had no choice. That weekend, I had another strange experience. Someone was knocking on my apartment door that Saturday night. When I answered it, I saw a large bald man standing there. He stared at me for a moment before doing anything, then pulled out a small manila folder and handed it to me. I was confused, but when I looked, I saw it had $3,000 in cash stuffed inside. The large man spoke in a dull monotone voice. Aurora Ridge thanks you for your work. Have a good evening. The man reached into his coat and pulled out a pair of sunglasses that looked a lot like Mr. Penny's, and just as he was about to place them on his head, I swear I saw a glint of green that did not look natural. He turned and walked away. When I returned on Monday night, I found that I had a visitor. It was not Mr. Penny, but an ancient-looking man who wore the dirt-speckled coveralls of the groundskeeper. He looked me up and down and scoffed as I entered. I waved to greet him and knew it must be Horace. He was holding a large bag of salt, and I saw several more in the corner. He scowled, then finally spoke. You must be Charlie's replacement. Haven't seen that big bald bastard around, but he owes me a pack of cigarettes. Though if you're here, it means old Charlie must have made a mistake. Anyway, it's windy tonight. I brought extra salt. You're going to need it. Don't let the line break. I don't want that light anywhere near the garden or anywhere else where it can get into. Don't forget, or it's your ass. He brushed past me and shot me one last hateful look before departing, slamming the rattling door as he did. I was shocked and confused. What happened to Charlie? Then I considered the large bald man I had not seen before who delivered my pay. He sounded a lot like this Charlie, but hadn't he been fired? Either way, it did not matter. I had to get to work. I climbed the ladder up to the lookout, and after the first 30 minutes, the wind whipped up so strongly that the lines of salt began to blow away, and several sections were barren. I nearly spat out my coffee and knew I had to get down there quickly. I rushed back down and grabbed one of the bags of salt Horace had left. It was heavy, and I wished I had some way of moving multiple bags, but there was no dolly or truck to do so. I hefted the bag up the hill and opened it, moving to where I had seen the broken section of the ring, and started pouring. As soon as I had finished, I saw more sections required repair. I made several more trips and was getting tired quickly. I managed to patch all the larger holes in the line, but there was one last segment that had a visible break. I had to stop and catch my breath for a moment, then I could go get another bag and fix it. As I sat there and looked at the silent sight, I shuddered when I remembered the night where the teens had broken in. I hoped that Mr. Penny had let them go like he said he would. I did not like the way they looked at the strange light, or how I had lost the last 2 hours of my night when I tried to ask him about it. As I caught my breath, I saw something inexplicable. There was a corona of that green light emerging from the ground near the edge where the break in the line was. I saw a small opossum walk toward the light. It moved in a straight line and did not seem bothered by the fact that I was watching it. Then I saw the light seem to stretch out and beyond the ring and reach out to the small animal. The glint of green that reflected in its eyes was terrible, and I stood up and rushed back down the hill to grab another bag and complete the circle again. When I got back, the animal was gone. I could not be sure, but I thought I saw scratch marks on the ground near the ring, like something had tried digging there. I finished the ring, and mercifully the wind had died down. As I tried to understand what had just happened, I heard something that froze my heart. I heard the chiming of a bell. I looked on in horror as one of the gravestone bells was slowly ringing. It was not the wind, it was not any external force. The bell was ringing and I had to act fast. I pressed the SOS button on the radio as I had been instructed and looked at the stone mausoleum nearby. A morbid part of me wanted to wait and see what was happening. It had to be some trick, it couldn't really be ringing on its own. But I had no time for questions. I remembered Mr. Penny's warning and went to the mausoleum, searched for the silver key, and opened it. I took one last look outside and confirmed that the small bell was still ringing before closing the heavy door and locking it again, sealing me off from whatever was happening outside. I expected something at the 3-minute mark, but I heard nothing. There was no window, so I couldn't see anything, but I swear I saw that damnable green light glowing softly from somewhere near the graves and peeking under the heavy door. I realized I still had my headset for the directional mic turned on. I had propped the mic on the chair, pointing down at the graves while I moved the salt. When I put the headphones on, I heard an odd static. I was not sure what could be making the sounds, but after waiting for almost an hour, I heard something else. It was a consistent scraping, digging sound, followed by a loud crash, like someone hitting wood with metal. I held my breath, and after a long moment I thought I heard a voice. "No, not yet. This one needs more time. They aren't ready. Just a bit more. Put them back." Then I heard the wooden crash again, followed by more digging. After a while, all the sounds had fallen silent. I was left cold and alone in that dark tomb, terrified but ultimately oblivious to what had just occurred right outside. I considered asking Mr. Penny about the bells again, but I did not know if I could trust whatever his answer might be. Whatever was going on at Aurora Ridge, it was getting more concerning by the day. I spent almost another entire week there, in tense anticipation of something terrible happening. I was getting freaked out, and despite the large payday, I was not sure it was smart to keep showing up. It was Thursday on week 3 that the reality of the situation was laid bare, and I saw the thing I could never unsee. It was a particularly cold night, and I feared the wind would whip the salt off the ring again, or worse, I would hear the bells. I was already on edge when I arrived, and when I saw the rain beginning to fall, my mood did not improve. I climbed the ladder to my lookout and struggled to hear anything over the deluge of rain. I paned around with my binoculars and saw the hideous aurora of light, emerging and reflecting the water in the air like a disturbing mono-colored rainbow. I wanted to look away, but the sight was captivating. I felt myself being drawn into the morbid spectacle, and I took an involuntary step forward. I managed to stop myself before I fell over the edge. Something clattered down the roof and smashed into the ground, and I realized I had dropped the directional microphone. I cursed my bad luck, but was grateful it had been that, and not me, that fell over. I looked over at the gravesite and saw something surprising. Despite the wind moving the salt the other day, the water from the rain did not seem to be dissolving the ring like I had expected. I was ready to bolt down and reapply it when I knew the rain was falling, but somehow it had stayed there, unaffected. I tried to distract myself by reading for a while, but I was paranoid by the lack of a microphone. I had gone down to the Foot Locker to find another, but it was empty. There must have only been one. I tried the radio to call for help and get another, but all I got was static. Since I could not hear anything, I tried to be hyper-vigilant with the binoculars and looked around frequently. In another few hours I was getting tired, but was glad the terrible night was almost over. All the coffee I had that night made forced me to take a restroom break. When I got back up the ladder, I looked out again, expecting to see nothing but rain splashing off the ground. Instead, I saw movement. To my horror, I looked again and saw 3 of the 4 bells ringing side to side. I had no idea how long they had been ringing at that point. I panicked and pressed the SOS button on the radio. Then I half climbed, half slid down the ladder, landing hard at the bottom. I sprinted up the hill, and as soon as I entered the clearing, I saw hellish light bathing the gravestones. The green glow seemed to pulse in time with the maddening chiming of the bells. I rushed to the mausoleum as the storm intensified. As I fumbled for the keys, I felt an odd tinge of static that in the next instant made me involuntarily fall back. I was glad I had leapt back, since in the next instant, a jagged bolt of incandescent green lightning struck near the mausoleum and hit with such tremendous force that a large crack split a section off the front of the building. I looked up in a terrible instant and saw the storm had taken on another worldly quality that made me dizzy to look at. I picked myself up, opened the door and dove into the mausoleum, closing it behind me. As I tried to catch my breath after the insane events, I felt a chill and realized something was wrong. The structure was damaged, and I could see through the fractured facade of the mausoleum wall. I could see everything. A large group of hooded figures had appeared, gathered around the gravestone. One wore the distinct sunglasses of Mr. Penny, others had shovels and were digging at the ground by the gravestones. Piles of dirt were dug up and cast aside as they moved deeper. I heard 3 shovels striking wood in unison. I looked on in numb horror as the green lighting struck the ground around where they had dug up 3 of the 4 graves. They bent down in unison and pulled the caskets out of the graves. I was not able to see who or what was in the coffins, but something about the way they reverently stood around them was disturbing. I heard a ringing sound in my ears, and a loud voice spoke out. It was terrible and commanding, and I was shocked when I saw it was Mr. Penny, who seemed to be speaking in a voice that sounded nothing like his own. "Bring them forward." 2 of the hooded figures brought a limp body up towards him, and I nearly cried out when I saw the body and recognized the girl. It was Erin, one of the teens who had broken in with her friends to see the light. She was unresponsive, but Mr. Penny reached down and touched her head. Then the 2 robed figure moved her body up toward him, and he took off his glasses, and I suppressed a horrified gasp as I saw the empty pits that hid underneath. He looked like he should be blind. He had no eyes, yet he reached out to touch the face of the young girl, and a terrible green light filled his hollow eyes and seemed to run down his hands and flow like a terrible river into Erin's limp body. I was shocked and confused. What happened to Charlie? Then I considered the large bald man I had not seen before who delivered my pay. He sounded a lot like this Charlie, but hadn't he been fired? Either way, it did not matter. I had to get to work. I climbed the ladder up to the lookout, and after the first 30 minutes, the wind whipped up so strongly that the lines of salt began to blow away, and several sections were barren. I nearly spat out my coffee and knew I had to get down there quickly. I rushed back down and grabbed one of the bags of salt Horace had left. It was heavy, and I wished I had some way of moving multiple bags, but there was no dolly or truck to do so. I hefted the bag up the hill and opened it, moving to where I had seen the broken section of the ring, and started pouring. As soon as I had finished, I saw more sections required repair. I made several more trips and was getting tired quickly. I managed to patch all the larger holes in the line, but there was one last segment that had a visible break. I had to stop and catch my breath for a moment, then I could go get another bag and fix it. As I sat there and looked at the silent sight, I shuddered when I remembered the night where the teens had broken in. I hoped that Mr. Penny had let them go like he said he would. I did not like the way they looked at the strange light, or how I had lost the last 2 hours of my night when I tried to ask him about it. As I caught my breath, I saw something inexplicable. There was a corona of that green light emerging from the ground near the edge where the break in the line was. I saw a small opossum walk toward the light. It moved in a straight line and did not seem bothered by the fact that I was watching it. Then I saw the light seem to stretch out and beyond the ring and reach out to the small animal. The glint of green that reflected in its eyes was terrible, and I stood up and rushed back down the hill to grab another bag and complete the circle again. When I got back, the animal was gone. I could not be sure, but I thought I saw scratch marks on the ground near the ring, like something had tried digging there. I finished the ring, and mercifully the wind had died down. As I tried to understand what had just happened, I heard something that froze my heart. I heard the chiming of a bell. I looked on in horror as one of the gravestone bells was slowly ringing. It was not the wind, it was not any external force. The bell was ringing and I had to act fast. I pressed the SOS button on the radio as I had been instructed and looked at the stone mausoleum nearby. A morbid part of me wanted to wait and see what was happening. It had to be some trick, it couldn't really be ringing on its own. But I had no time for questions. I remembered Mr. Penny's warning and went to the mausoleum, searched for the silver key, and opened it. I took one last look outside and confirmed that the small bell was still ringing before closing the heavy door and locking it again, sealing me off from whatever was happening outside. I expected something at the 3-minute mark, but I heard nothing. There was no window, so I couldn't see anything, but I swear I saw that damnable green light glowing softly from somewhere near the graves and peeking under the heavy door. I realized I still had my headset for the directional mic turned on. I had propped the mic on the chair, pointing down at the graves while I moved the salt. When I put the headphones on, I heard an odd static. I was not sure what could be making the sounds, but after waiting for almost an hour, I heard something else. It was a consistent scraping, digging sound, followed by a loud crash, like someone hitting wood with metal. I held my breath, and after a long moment I thought I heard a voice. "No, not yet. This one needs more time. They aren't ready. Just a bit more, put them back." Then I heard the wooden crash again, followed by more digging. After a while, all the sounds had fallen silent. I was left cold and alone, in that dark tomb, terrified but ultimately oblivious to what had just occurred right outside. I considered asking Mr. Penny about the bells again, but I did not know if I could trust whatever his answer might be. Whatever was going on at Aurora Ridge, it was getting more concerning by the day. I spent almost another entire week there, in tense anticipation of something terrible happening. I was getting freaked out, and despite the large payday, I was not sure it was smart to keep showing up. It was Thursday on week 3 that the reality of the situation was laid bare, and I saw the thing I could never unsee. It was a particularly cold night, and I feared the wind would whip the salt off the ring again, or worse, I would hear the bells. I was already on edge when I arrived, and when I saw the rain beginning to fall, my mood did not improve. I climbed the ladder to my lookout and struggled to hear anything over the deluge of rain. I paned around with my binoculars and saw the hideous aurora of light, emerging and reflecting the water in the air like a disturbing mono-colored rainbow. I wanted to look away, but the sight was captivating. I felt myself being drawn into the morbid spectacle, and I took an involuntary step forward. I managed to stop myself before I fell over the edge. Something clattered down the roof and smashed into the ground, and I realized I had dropped the directional microphone. I cursed my bad luck, but was grateful it had been that, and not me, that fell over. I looked over at the gravesite and saw something surprising. Despite the wind moving the salt the other day, the water from the rain did not seem to be dissolving the ring like I had expected. I was ready to bolt down and reapply it when I knew the rain was falling, but somehow it had stayed there, unaffected. I tried to distract myself by reading for a while, but I was paranoid by the lack of a microphone. I had gone down to the footlocker to find another, but it was empty. There must have only been one. I tried the radio to call for help and get another, but all I got was static. Since I could not hear anything, I tried to be hyper-vigilant with the binoculars and looked around frequently. In another few hours I was getting tired, but was glad the terrible night was almost over. All the coffee I had that night made forced me to take a restroom break. When I got back up the ladder, I looked out again, expecting to see nothing but rain splashing off the ground. Instead, I saw movement. To my horror, I looked again and saw 3 of the 4 bells ringing side to side. I had no idea how long they had been ringing at that point. I panicked and pressed the SOS button on the radio. Then I half climbed, half slid down the ladder, landing hard at the bottom. I sprinted up the hill, and as soon as I entered the clearing, I saw hellish light bathing the gravestones. The green glow seemed to pulse in time with the maddening chiming of the bells. I rushed to the mausoleum as the storm intensified. As I fumbled for the keys, I felt an odd tinge of static that in the next instant made me involuntarily fall back. I was glad I had leapt back, since in the next instant, A jagged bolt of incandescent green lightning struck near the mausoleum and hit with such tremendous force that a large crack split a section off the front of the building. I looked up in a terrible instant and saw the storm had taken on an otherworldly quality that made me dizzy to look at. I picked myself up, opened the door and dove into the mausoleum, closing it behind me. As I tried to catch my breath after the insane events, I felt a chill and realized something was wrong. The structure was damaged, and I could see through the fractured facade of the mausoleum wall. I could see everything. A large group of hooded figures had appeared, gathered around the gravestone. One wore the distinct sunglasses of Mr. Penny, others had shovels and were digging at the ground by the gravestones. Piles of dirt were dug up and cast aside as they moved deeper. I heard 3 shovels striking wood in unison. I looked on in numb horror as the green lighting struck the ground around where they had dug up 3 of the 4 graves. They bent down in unison and pulled the caskets out of the graves. I was not able to see who or what was in the coffins, but something about the way they reverently stood around them was disturbing. I heard a ringing sound in my ears, and a loud voice spoke out. It was terrible and commanding, and I was shocked when I saw it was Mr. Penny, who seemed to be speaking in a voice that sounded nothing like his own. "Bring them forward." 2 of the hooded figures brought a limp body up towards him, and I nearly cried out when I saw the body and recognized the girl. It was Erin, one of the teens who had broken in with her friends to see the light. She was unresponsive, but Mr. Penny reached down and touched her head. Then the 2 robed figures moved her body up toward him, and he took off his glasses, and I suppressed a horrified gasp as I saw the empty pits that hid underneath. He looked like he should be blind. He had no eyes, yet he reached out to touch the face of the young girl, and a terrible green light filled his hollow eyes and seemed to run down his hands and flow like a terrible river into Erin's limp body. Then the eldritch green light flashed, sparked, and a dull rumble was heard, followed by a gasp of air. She was alive, but as her eyes fluttered open, I saw the same inhuman green flame in them as well. They were about to repeat the ritual when I heard mutterings, and one of the robbed figures asked Mr. Penny about the 4th grave. He held up a finger and then pointed in my direction at the mausoleum, and all I could hear was, "Soon." I huddled down, unable to look at the blasphemous scene any longer. My head started to hurt, and there was a ringing in my ears. Then I blacked out. When I woke up, it was morning. I stole a peek outside and saw that the grave sites were just as they had been before, undisturbed. Even the soil looked unbothered. I started to wonder if it could all have been a terrible nightmare. I rubbed my eyes in disbelief, slowly turned around and left. I drove home in a daze, conscious but bewildered. When I got back, I tried to process what I saw that night. I decided to look into Mr. Penny and see if I could find something out about him. When I started looking, I was horrified at my revelation. There was a V. Penny, the original owner of Aurora Ridge Cemetery, who had died 85 years ago. No known descendants, no family. I remembered the hollow eyes from that night, the green flames burning in his skull, and I shuddered. The terrible revelations continued when I saw on the news that 3 teens had been declared missing after failing to return home the previous week. When I saw their faces and heard the names announced, my heart sank. It was the same 3 from that night. All of them had been standing right in front of me a little over a week ago. The implications made me sick when I considered the graves, 3 of them, 3 people taken, 3 bells ringing out, then the sight of one of them screaming back to life in the hands of Mr. Penny. I stayed home that night. I could not sleep, and the nervous tension made me paranoid. I started writing and someone knocked on my door. It was nearly midnight, and I grabbed a kitchen knife on my way to investigate. I looked out the peephole and nearly gasped aloud when I saw the face of that young girl, Erin. She was just standing there, smiling. I almost reached for the door, but as I did, she spoke. "Hello, Ben. Please remember to call out if you are feeling sick in the future. Don't forget it's payday tomorrow. We have something for you back at Aurora Ridge. Please come back. It won't take long and you can finally find a place where you belong. Think of the light, the bell. The last one can be for you. Mr. Penny was right. I can see things now, things I could never see before. You can too." She left at some point, and I was alone again. That was last night. I have not left my apartment since then. They keep showing up, beckoning me back to that place where souls return to bath in that monstrous light that claims the living and the dead. In the distance, I swear I could hear the 4th bell chiming for me, calling me to the deepest parts of the earth to find out the secrets of the chthonic realm of dark stone and death. The sound is getting louder, but I will try and ignore it tonight. I need to finish this account. If anyone is reading this, do not trust the light. Do not listen to the things it brings back. And most of all, do not listen to Mr. Penny if he offers you something that is too good to be true. Story 2. Hello. The past 3 days since that night have been a swirl of packing, making calls, talking to managers, moving out and in, and trying to barely think about what happened. But I'm going to post this as a little insurance. That's if I can even type it all out. Every creak of flooring and every door slammed in my building feels like death. I'm going to change the names around, but someone very close will reveal this is real if my company tries anything. I don't think they really would, but I'm on such an edge right now I couldn't get the thought out of my head, so here I am. My name's Riley, and I work as a night watchman. I've been trying to make a music career work, but the money hasn't exactly been flowing. My bass player, Mule, his real name's Stan, but he carries our heaviest equipment, so we call him Mule, and I got the job together, and for the last 5 months it's been great. We'd work shows from evening till night, then we'd go to work and make our rounds talking about the band. The worst thing that ever happened was just stuff like snakes or birds tripping alarms. All of this is to say, I would have been content to keep the routine for years, until Wednesday night. The company I work for is pretty big and owns a lot of blue-collar sites, and the one I was working at is a nickel refinery. We don't have many of them in the US, but the one I worked at is a pretty busy one. Anyway, we were probably halfway through our shift. Mule was in the parking lot, and I was heading up onto a catwalk above a pile of raw nickel. We were playing this game where one of us hums a song and the other has to guess the band. It's Queen. Another one bites the dust. Mule would usually throw me the basics. It sounds like a boring game, sure, but when it's dark and every gust of wind or fallen leaf makes you jump, it helps ease your nerves. I was passing along the catwalk, losing to Mule as he guessed a Soundgarden song, when I started absent-mindedly kicking bits of nickel. Filtered rocks piled out from a sieve a little ways off the walk, but bits would still fall onto it. They would scrape across the metal and make a dull sound below. Screech. Thud. Mule was checking out a truck for a second, so I was all alone. In those moments between words, you really have to force off any nerves and just pretend like you're in control. I came to another rock. Screech. Thud. When I say pretend to be in control, I just mean you have to throw off the technicalities. Technically, someone could be sneaking up behind me, but technically, if I turn my back, whoever's waiting ahead could take their shot. Another rock. Screech. Thud. The best you can do is just keep forward, hold your nerves, watch, and hope. I heard a bang of metal somewhere far off, and I began to listen in close. There was a final rock. Screech. The crack. Hiss! My attention snapped below. I tried to tell myself that it was a snake, but a snake couldn't hiss loud enough to hear from a catwalk. Besides, this noise was different. Hey Mule, I heard something weird. I think there's some animal in the facility. I'm gonna go check it out. Okay, sounds good. That truck was fine, by the way. Someone just forgot to roll their windows down. I swear, man. He rambled on, but even with Mule talking, the silence was thicker. Sounds like the rattling of the stairs was actually eerie again, but I was still able to pretend it was nothing important. I wasn't too sure after I saw a large chunk of nickel split in half, oozing with a grey, pungent slime that led away. I radioed in and explained to Mule. Really? Yeah, man, come down here and look at this shit. Despite my instincts, I threw a look over my shoulder. I don't want to deal with this alone. I think I might go ahead and radio in to the others. Mule and I were only junior watchmen, so we just got a taser and outside watch. The senior watchmen actually had guns and were assigned to the file rooms. Well, you know the rules. We only radio if something's wrong. Seems like something's wrong to me. Sigh. Yeah, I meant like if we actually see something. I mean, what's to say it's not just some hibernating reptile or something? Bro, it came out of solid rock. Listen, just wait there. I'm heading your way. You're in the East Wing, right? Yeah, I'll be waiting here. 3 agonizing minutes passed by as I waited. 3 minutes of jumping at birds flying off, staring and darkly theorizing at the slime, and barely breathing to keep quiet. I almost had a heart attack when I was struck by Mule's flashlight for the first time. What took you so long? Calm down, man, it's not— Whoa! Mule flashed his light over the rock. I saw the fear creep its way over his face, but then he fought against it. Look, Riley, this is definitely freaky, but it's our job to deal with stuff on our own before calling for backup. I stood there locking eyes with him, shifting on the spot. He had a point, sure, but I wish I'd had the spine to tell him no. Probably wouldn't have changed anything, but still, it would have been better. You remember what happened to Jane? She had one false alarm and they put her off duty for a week. Okay, fine. I scanned around. Whatever was leaking out of the nickel only went a few meters beyond it. The trail leads down that way, but there's a fork south and north. I'll take south, all right? Mule scanned around a bit, trying to seem in control before answering. Okay, sounds good. I remember getting some of my confidence back after regrouping with Mule. It really began to be feasible in my mind that this was some rare animal we hadn't heard of. We went on our separate paths, and the paranoia began to eat over me once more. My radio sparked up. Look, now's not the fucking time. All right, man, calm down. We'll get this over with first. Good, and besides, that was Wayward's son, and you made it obvious. I found nothing, just some high-dollar equipment that wasn't locked up. After I set it in its place, I radioed in. Mule, I'm not finding anything on my end. It probably is some kind of lizard or something. I'll keep looking, but... Riley, he was speaking in a shaky whisper. I found something. It looks like some kind of husk. What does it look like? It's like... Oh shit! Wait, what? Ah! The radio pierced my ear with static, but I didn't bother to turn it off as I ran back the way I came, taser out. I found a break room trailer with the door open, but all was silent. I began to make my way over to the door, but suddenly a streak of shiny grey-black came hissing out of the darkness. I fired my taser the moment I saw it, without aiming first, and I put up my hands to brace. It hit me with more force than I expected from something so small, and I felt a wet, searing pain run over my arm. I dropped onto my back, and whatever it was, ran off farther into the facility. I was trying to catch my breath, but the pain in my arm was taking it away. I ran into the trailer and flipped the light on, but pain or not, the macabre and disgusting sight of Mule froze me for a moment. I ran over to the sink and ripped off my jacket and ran my arm under hot water. Across my left forearm was a grey, shimmering slime, and though it was cold as ice, its acidity burned like hot steel. I only got hit with some residue off its body, though, so I was able to wash it off. It hurt me to do so, but after I was done, I turned around. There are many scenes from that night that will haunt me, but seeing Mule, laid out over the coffee table, eyes and mouth agape, in a petrified scream as the rest of his body was melting into shimmering goo and red slush, will hurt me for years to come. Even the band pins on his coat were melting. Those were his favorite. I went back outside and picked up the radio I'd dropped. I found it too, had gotten a slash of acid, and was subsequently buzzing and chirping uselessly. I had two options: hole up in the trailer and hope it didn't come back, or make a break for the security office. My nerves were too shot to think clearly, but hours of loneliness with Mule's disintegrating corpse was still a hard sell. Besides, I still had a job to do. I started walking. Each breath and step felt like trying to soundlessly drag a bag of metal pans. At that point, it didn't matter what the noise was. It made me jump and stand still all the same. I wouldn't say I'm not brave. I had respect from the other security workers and I've handled myself well, but what are you supposed to do? Stay calm in the face of some unknown thing that's as fast as a wasp and melts skin? I began to pick up on a trail that, much to my nausea, was in the direction I was headed. Scenes like forklifts seared down to a third, discarded bits of flesh, and sickening pieces of molted grey skin began to pop up. I kept on until I saw a reflective mound ahead. One of the other watchmen, Ted, had been attacked. All that was left of him was bone, a few stray scraps of flesh, and his radio. I almost marveled at how fast this thing could pick someone apart while I clicked it on. Hello, this is Riley. Something's loose in the facility and I need help. I'm just outside the office, so meet me down here. No response. I set it on SOS and kept walking, but I soon heard a noise. It reminded me of a dog eating kibble, and when I rounded the corner, I saw it. Most of it was just a dark grey silhouette, but I could make out many details. Somehow it had grown to be at least 3 meters. Its body was long and covered in shiny hairs that looked sharp as needles. Its arms, there had to be at least 7 pairs, were busy probing over a pile of raw nickel. I watched it consume pounds and pounds of nickel as leftover flesh flicked off its sharp body. I was just standing there, peeking around an excavator, when my radio suddenly sounded. Hey, Ryle. I snapped it off and ducked under the machine. The noise had ceased, and it became deathly quiet. Silent as it was, I could still hear it inching towards me. Under a half-moon's light, I could barely see the bottom of it over the long rubber wheels. Time had slowed down. Acid saliva dripping down seemed to take minutes. Multiple legs piercing the soil beneath felt like hours. And then, when it was only a couple meters away, I began to hear its high-pitched hum. "Riley, where you at?" "Tracker says he's just over there." It sounded like my supervisor and some of the other senior watchmen. My heart sank when the thing flipped around and rushed towards them. There was nothing I could do. I just sat there as my ears were barraged by the sounds of screams, a terrifying insectoid warble, and gunshots. When I heard the crunching of bone, I nearly began to cry. The feeding was over quick, and I suppose it had forgotten about me because everything was silent before long. It still took some time to drag myself out, though. Once more I was faced with a choice: stay there and wait to be hunted, or make for the security office where they lock our phones up for a shift. I chose the latter, and I suppose the guilt of my cowardice helped push me forward. I'll spare you the details of the leftovers, but it's enough to say the number of bodies only left me and some scattered junior watchmen. I found the office undisturbed as I quickly bolted the door behind me. There's a main tracking system that shows where each radio is in the facility. To my surprise, one of them, Leonard's, was heading straight for the office. It then hurt me dearly to realize it was only me and him left. As the first light of day shone through the blinds, Leonard came smashing into the office door, and I think I almost gave him a heart attack when I unbolted it and popped out at him. "Ah! It's me, man, calm down." "Riley, this fucking thing, it attacked me and Chris and..." I know, just breathe and keep quiet, man." I pulled him in and locked up. We sat there unloading on each other. "I can't believe Mule's dead, Riley." I know." My thoughts turned to him. Rotting in that trailer, when we should be getting off to go sleep right now. I thought of our dreams, all our plans, taken away. The only thing I could do for him now was to try and get this thing caught. "Leonard, keep watch. I'm gonna go get my phone to call the cops." My hands were still shaking, so it took a few tries to get the combination lock off, but once I did, I dialed 911 faster than you can imagine. As I was beginning to explain things to a tired operator, Leonard's face made me pause. He looked mortified. I knelt down beside him and separated the blinds. There, at the end of the yard, we saw it. It was over 12 meters long, and it was climbing over the fence, dragging a pair of legs with it. And not far behind, something small followed, something with shiny hairs and dozens of legs. Once it was gone, the whole night and its implications finally dawned on me. These monstrous killers were loose, and I freed them. Someone else would have eventually, sure, but still, they could kill anyone in their way. Guns apparently didn't work on them, and they were breeding. We kept our frozen position on that couch for hours until everyone arrived. After that, it all feels like one long, sleepless dream. The company couldn't have this out, so I guess some deals were made. Because the next day, the cops were reporting that a machine accident had taken out all the watchmen together in the office, all but me and Leonard. I was in no state to perform. My best bandmate Mule was gone, and so my music career was certainly not high on my priorities. Besides, with all the stress and lack of sleep, I could barely think as they shoved papers and NDAs under my nose. I could lose my job, or I could take a serious pay raise on the other side of the country. I don't know if it was the right decision, and I don't know if going back on my word and posting this is either, but I still don't want some suit deciding I'm not worth the risk and snuffing me out. Hopefully this post protects against that. I'm not sure where life is taking me now, but at least it's away from that town. With those things, maybe this all amounts to nothing but the death of a few good men, my good friends, but maybe those things are multiplying. If they are, then be ready to hide, and stay away from nickel refineries.